In a world where billions of people scroll past thousands of images every single day, what is it that actually makes someone stop?
That's the golden question, actually, isn't it? Is it the color? Is it the lighting? Or is it something deeper? I think the answer is very simple. I think it's the story. A great photograph doesn't just have a face in it. It tells us a story. It has a deeper meaning to it.
Exactly. And that is why we are here today. Dear ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, respected faculty members, and honorable board of trustee members. Assalamu alaikum everyone and a very good afternoon to you all. I, Maya Muna,
And I, Salsa Bilhaq, would like to warmly welcome you to today's much anticipated event. A session titled From Witness to Memory, a conversation on photojournalism across generations, organized by none other than Gazi Nafis Ahmed, sir, for the Department of Media, Communication and Journalism, NCJ, at North South University.
our newly formed Our newly formed department has always been a hub for storytellers, truth seekers, and creative minds. With our new open elective NCJ1 for photojournalism, we are pushing the boundaries of how to document the world around us and realize the ever-changing possibilities of this medium in this contemporary. We believe that journalism shouldn't be limited to reporting facts only. It should also be about depicting the essence of the human condition. And today, we are taking that mission global.
We are incredibly privileged to join virtually by two titans of visual storytelling who represent different eras and perspectives of the craft. Our first speaker needs very little introduction to those familiar with the world of documentary photography. Ed Kashi is a name synonymous with over decades of uncompromising visual journalism. As a contributing member of the prestigious Seven Foundation, Ed is not just a photographer, he's a relentless advocate for the power of images to create change. His work is defined by restless creativity, whether documenting the impact of oil in the Niger Delta, the complexities of an aging American population, choose the plight of refugees. He approaches every story with a sensitive eye and an intimate relationship to his subjects. Beyond his mastery of the still image, Ed is a pioneer in the evolution of storytelling. He was named Multimedia Photographer of the Year for his innovative embrace of film and technology, constantly asking how we can make people stop, look, and feel. He is the founder of Talking Eyes Media, and his career is a testament to the belief that journalism has a responsibility to fight for a better world.
While Ed represents the depth of experience, our next speaker represents the brilliant future of the media. Mohamed Mahdy is a visual storyteller from Alexandria, Egypt. At just 29 years of age, he has already been recognized by the New York Times, The Guardian, the Magnum Foundation as a leading emerging talent when he was 21 years old. What makes Mohammed's work so powerful is its specific sense of purpose. His practice focuses on the hidden and often unseen communities in Egypt facing the imminent threat of disappearance. He proves that photography can be a direct agent of change. His early project, Moon Dust, successfully forced a cement factory to change its harmful practices that won World Press Photo again this year in 2026. Mohammed won the World Press Photo Award in 2023 for his deeply personal project, Here, the Doors Don't Know Me. Through this work, he documents the vanishing fishing neighborhood of Al Max, exploring themes of hope, belonging, and collective memory. He is a shining example of how young photographers are using visual media to foster a positive change and reconnect divided communities.
Okay, can we have a huge round of applause for Ed Kashi and Mohamed, please?
We are also joined by our esteemed session chair, Vice Chancellor Dr. Abdul Hanan Chaudhry, sir, Our chief guests and board of trustee members, Mr. Benajir Ahmed and Mohamed Shahjahan, and our special guest, Amreen Bashir Ali. And of course, a huge shout out to the man behind the scenes and our moderator for today, Gazi Nafis Ahmed sir, for bringing this vision to life. Thank you so much, sir. So without further ado, I would like to call our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to the stage to share his insights.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Kashi Nafis to brought at North South University uh, one of the very timely, I would say that the essence in regards to the photojournalism related to today's session that you have brought from witness to memory, a conversation of photojournalism across generations. I would first thank the esteemed guest from the United States, Dr. Ed Kashi, and also Mahdy, Mohamed Mahdy from Egypt, to join here at North South University virtually. But I think that will our dear students and of the audience are waiting to hear from them in regards to their perception and also knowledge about those photojournalism. That's going to be very beneficial. And also the our other Mubarak Ali foundations from Miss what is her name? Amreen Bashir. She is also a pioneer in this regard. And for all of you, thank you very much for coming here at North South University and bringing a very interesting topic in terms of the photojournalism. Most of you know that well, we are living in an era of technology convergence. And just because technology has converged, every individual in the planet Earth has become a sort of a journalist just because of the power of the cell phone, mobile phone, and the photo that you all take in many situation and scenarios that has become very, very powerful in terms of actually giving sort of understanding what's going on in the other side of the stories and giving the right story to the nation, to the even whole world to some extent. It has photograph and photojournalism has become, and also citizen journalism has become so very powerful nowadays just because of one single igniting photographs that has become not only one simple story, that has become actually stories after stories and narratives after narratives that create enormous impact in terms of if we talk about the human rights violations, if we talk about any social cause, social problems, social issues that can be depicted through a photograph, and that has been become nowadays I would say great powerful essence of conveying the message to the audience, target audience. And here I see that the importance for the current generation of the students to learn even not only the classroom teaching that the way we teach the media communication and journalism, but also being a citizen, being an individual, that wherever you are, you truly can relate something that is very important for the current context of the world that we live, whether it is whether it is an issue related to deprivation, segregation, unjust, and anything that is happening in regards to a particular community or a particular group of people, and anything that we see a particular community, those who are vulnerable, the photojournalism brings those things in the limelight, and eventually that creates enormous impact in terms of the changes that we want in the societal changes that we want, whether it is legal matters, whether it is justice, whether it is bringing the actual scenario to the public, faces. That is what is actually, I would say, very important, very important. To me, the journalism has transformed and converted to a different direction now. Powerful, influence of, all sort of technologies in important. We also want to warn the student body, particularly the young youth, the impact of AI and also sort of AI-driven photographs, things that you all have to be also very cautious in regards to the AI impact. And then knowledge of technology is also very important, because if you don't understand, you will see that, well, misinformation will be conveyed through a fake photograph or fake things that are generated by technology driven things. So knowledge has to be all side, that one has to have that idea crossing and things that you can actually imagine. You can also portray and see that, well, whether it is a real things or not. Technology driven things help us. Also technology driven things also put us in deep into trouble in many senses. So when we say that the citizenship journalism through photojournalism, you must be also aware of those things, that where misinformation, disinformation can also create enormous problem in our society, and eventually that is spread it across the world. So let us be very cautious in terms of disseminating any information through even photograph, either in any social media or any other platform that you see in the internet. You should be also be very concerned about those things, because nowadays any picture, anything that can be converted through the AI driven things, and that can actually convey a wrong message to a society. And often we see that, well, young people are sometime and often running after something that at the end we see that, well, the story or whatever the original message, that's not true through even a photograph. So let us hear from these esteemed guests and their experience when they have taken some, for example, especially for Mohamed Mahdy's case, you see that, well, some of the pictures are so very powerful in his experiences, that creates and shakes literally the global bodies into some extent. That is what we see, that, well, positive uses of technology in the for the betterment of the humanity, even to some extent. So thank you very much, Mr. Mahdy, and also Ed Kashi. Thank you for joining. I don't know whether you know about North South University, but I'm giving you sort of understanding about North South and Bangladesh. You are truly in the right place, and you are truly in the esteemed institutions of our country. We are here in Bangladesh, but we are no less than any other institutions in the global standard. So you should be very also proud and connect and help us, giving you knowledge. And we believe that, well, knowledge is here and there and everywhere, and your knowledge is going to help us, our STEAM, students and us, to enrich our knowledge, and through which we're going to continuously pursue creating new knowledges, and that knowledge are going to be the knowledge that my dear students are going to use in the upcoming future, and they all are going to become, as I would say that, well, journalists by profession, and also being citizen, that citizens of journalism, they are going to take as responsibility as being a human being. So thank you very much, Nafis. Wonderful session that we are beginning, welcoming all of you on behalf of North South University, and let us continue our events today, and I'm sure that we all are going to benefit from here. Thank you, our honorable members, to be part of this team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your inspiring speech. It has always been a pleasure to hear such insightful words from you.
Ladies and gentlemen, now please join us in warmly welcoming our esteemed chief guest, member of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Benajir Ahmed, to the stage. Please give a huge round of applause, please.
Good afternoon to everybody, but good morning to our guests who are participating online from Netherlands and USA. Mr. Chairman of the session, Vice Chancellor Professor Abdul Hanan Chaudhary, our Board of Trustees founder, member, and former chairman, Mr. Mohamed Shah Jahan. We have amongst us here our very, very special guest and speaker, Ed Masi, Mr. Ed Masi. Ed Kashi. Ed Kashi. Yes, sir. Good morning to you. Thank you. And Mohamed Mahdy. You are from Netherlands. Egypt. Okay. So both are good morning, good morning. And we have also our local very special guest, Amreen Bashir Ali, who is the CEO of Mubarak Ali Foundation. Thank you. Thank you so much. I can see it's a very vibrant session. Everybody is waiting for something. Maybe our speakers, they will give their good deliberation, but it is very much important that our Department of Media, Communication and Journalism, they have organized a wonderful event. And the students, obviously, they are enjoying. I'm not a photographer, but I am a man of media community. I can demand myself. Yes, in the digitalized world, I was the founder of 2 private TV channel and also one dailies as a managing editor. So my involvement in the media and journalism since my student life. In the year 72 in Dhaka University, when I was a student, that time we organized a media journalism club and cultural group. So I was involved from that time. In our university, North South University, maybe media, communication and journalism, we have opened a bit late, but there's one reason. We never start anything with haphazardly or any initial way. Everything we want in the best performance and the way of the best way. So our media journalism club department now is a very rich department, and our students taking intake is very strong, choosy, and what I can see in the result in the admission test, it is not easy to get admission in our university. So we have already enrolled. Welcome to our world, NSU world. So today, our speakers, they will give you a lot of good ideas because the present digitalized world, the photojournalism and media, it is also in the prime line of communication. And one photo can give you a reflection of a total topics event. If I say about look, art and photography, say it is very important for our communication. And I believe that our students, they'll enjoy this department and the activities of this media journalism club. And please take the lead of this, the media journalism from NSU Media Journalism Club. I wish this seminar a grand success, and I have my special thanks to the organizers, especially Gazi Nafis Ahmed. He talked with me several times. I understand it will be a very good program, and I can see really it is a successful program. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your meaningful insight, sir. It truly means a lot to us. Now, I would like to invite on stage our special guest, Amreen Bashir. Before that, let me introduce her. Amreen Bashir is a strategist and academic working at the intersection of culture, education, and global development. She leads initiatives at the Mubarak Ali Foundation, focused on cultural diplomacy and education, including partnership with institutions such as Harvard Business School. She holds degrees from McGill University, Harvard Graduate School of Education, and Oxford University, and is currently pursuing a PhD in educational technology at Trinity College Dublin. So please give a huge round of applause for Ms. Amreen Bashir.
Good afternoon, students, board members, faculty, and thank you for joining us, Ed and Mohamed. It is a real privilege to be here today, especially in a room that is thinking seriously about how images shape memory and ultimately history. My name is Amreen Bashir Ali, and I lead the Mubarak Ali Foundation. Our work sits at the intersection of art, education, and cultural diplomacy. We invest in spaces that shape how Bangladesh sees itself and how the world sees Bangladesh, because those two things are deeply connected. At the foundation, we believe that narratives are not just soft power, they are power. And few mediums carry that power as directly and as viscerally as photojournalism. Photojournalism, at its best, does something very specific. It interrupts, it forces attention, it makes people stop. And in a world of endless scrolling, that is no small feat. In many ways, it is an act of resistance. But there is also a deeper responsibility, because who gets photographed, how they are framed, and where those images travel shape not just perception, but dignity. It shapes whether a country like Bangladesh is seen only through the lens of crisis or through the full complexity of its people, its creativity, and its momentum. Bangladesh has a long and powerful history of visual storytelling. From the images of 1971 that documented both brutality and resilience, to contemporary photographers who are redefining how we see Bangladeshi identity and culture. There is a richness here that is still not fully understood globally. And that is where I think this conversation today becomes important. Moving from witness to memory is not automatic. It requires intention. It requires platforms. And it requires a new generation of storytellers who are not just documenting events, but shaping narratives with clarity and integrity. At the Mubarak Ali Foundation, we are thinking deeply about how to support those ecosystems, whether that is through partnerships with platforms like Art Taka, or creating global spaces like the first ever Bangla House at South by Southwest London. We work to create and support platforms where Bangladesh can be seen in its full dimension. Because ultimately, the question is not just what we capture, the question is what endures. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today and to learning from everyone on this panel. Thank you, Dhonabad.
Thank you so much for your heartfelt words. It was a pleasure listening to you.
Today's session would not have been possible without the vision, dedication, and quiet labor of one person working behind the scenes. For those who may not know him, Gazi Nafis Ahmed sir is not only a gifted visual artist and photographer himself, but he also serves as a senior lecturer in the Department of Media, Communication and Journalism, NCJ, here at North-South University. His work as an educator goes beyond the syllabus. He shapes how his students see, think, and question the world through images. Today, he has worn many hats: organizer, moderator, bridge builder between generations of photographers, and quiet force who brought together legends like Kashi and rising stars like Mohamed Mahdy to this very stage virtually. He is the reason we are all here, faculty, students, and guests alike, gathered in this room to learn not just how to take a photograph, but how to make them matter. Sir, your students are watching, and we see you. Please join us on stage with a round of applause for Gazi Nafis Ahmed, sir.
So first of all, I want to thank Ed and Mahdi. I have known Ed for almost 2 decades now, maybe, and 15 years. And Mahdi and me, we went to the same undergrad school, which is called the Danish School of Media and Journalism. So I'm really grateful to them for their presence. Very important photographers globally. I also want to thank the VC and the board members who were here and everyone around here. I see you guys are very passionately waiting for them to start their conversation. I won't take that long. I just want to say, our media communication journalism is a very new department in North-South University, and I teach photojournalism, and I'm trying to spread this course, which is a new open elective course. So it's MCJ 104, actual chart. Anyone's welcome to take part in it. Thank you, Amreen, Bashir, Ali. Thank you, Norman, for being here, and everyone. So what I really find interesting about Ed and Mahdi together is that even though they come from very different moments and practices, both of them are dealing with the same question, which is, what does it really mean to tell a story through an image? Ed's work has always gone beyond documenting. It's about engaging, making people feel and respond. And Mahdi's project, especially here, The Doors Don't Know Me, shifts that even further, where the story is not only photographed, but built together with people inside it. So he kind of like, it's a participation and there's a mutual cooperation in that. And I think that says a lot about where contemporary photojournalism is now. It's not just about being there anymore. It's about how you see, how you choose, and what you decide to show. So with that, let's begin. I won't take any more time. Thank you all once again.
Okay, so let's get started with the session. Mr. Kashi and Mr. Mahdy, can you hear us? Okay, so we will get started with Mr. Mahdy now. Thank you.
Right, you can hear me now, right?
Yes, we can hear you. You're awesome. We can get started.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for the amazing introduction, for the MC, for the university, for the student, for everyone who's involved in this event. It's magnificent, and I'm always feel honored when a lot of people gather in one room and we share conversation. I believe it's always bring new perspectives, and it's actually open a conversation. So basically, my name is Mohamed Mahdy. I'm from Egypt or Netherlands. I don't care, to be honest. It's something I have always believed. It doesn't matter from where we are coming, but what's important is where we are heading. And I feel like photography, education itself, it's always open this conversation to find an answer. Where are you going next? And for me, my career, because I'm not going to mention everything about my career because of time, but just a brief about what I was doing. I started photography in an early age when I was 14 years old, and I started as a street photographer. And to be honest, I feel like it's an honor, but also I feel like I was the luckiest person, because imagine in the streets you are encountering all of these narratives. It simply do something to you without realizing is you cannot stop comparing these stories and these narratives to your own life. So it's always changing you first as a human being. And of course, when you compare it to your life, sometimes it opens a new perspective and you realize that your opinion is not what only matters. There is also 100 other perspective and opinions and other lives that is important. And sometimes if you have any difficulties in your life and you encounter like a difficult narrative, sometimes you feel like, like, and I thought my life is difficult. But again, it happened for a reason. That's why I love we are all being here from different perspectives and different culture, identities, and background, because again, sharing conversation, it always opens these perspective. So this is what I learned in the early stages of my career as a street photographer. And also it made me, when I work on a new project, actually to surrender to the place itself, because usually it comes with your ego, that you feel like I have a perspective, I have a story, I have a narrative, I want to photograph or work on or investigate. And sometimes you meet the reality, and then reality sometimes shock you that what you know is not really nice, or sometimes actually the reality of showing your work to an editor or sometimes a publishing house, and then they feel, this narrative will not fit maybe our audience. And then you ask yourself, why I'm doing this narrative and for whom? And again, it brings you back to like, okay, I should surrender to the environment. And maybe I faced all of that in my last long-term project, which is I'm going to share today, the project called Here's the Doors Do Not Know Me. I hope you are seeing my screen. Yes, nice. So the project started in the west of Alexandria. It's a neighborhood called Al-Maks. It's a fishing village, one of the ancient in the whole Middle East, like 200 years old. And in 2016, the first time I went there, it's because of my college. I started arts and design, and we used to go and photograph and paint. And actually, this area was very beautiful, actually, because of the colorful houses, the boats, and actually the friendly fishermen. So I went there, and actually there was no narrative back then. It was just like what I witnessed, which is like the normal daily life of a fisherman, until the end of the year when they got a notification from the government that they will demolish their houses without any official reason why they are going to do that. And then people would lost their homes. I started back then to quickly document the neighborhood, the fishermen stories, like I used to do, like documenting and witnessing what's happening, writing about people's life or about their culture, because we felt back then that part of our culture identity will fade away. And usually here, like the government, when they are demolishing a new neighborhood, they don't actually care about what people would feel, what people will lose. And the identity is important because, of course, like they have been discussing this many years, like if you removed like the people from the fishing village and you put them away from the sea, when they grow up, what are they going to do? There will be no fishermen anymore. And then I have been documenting all of these changes and all of these discussions and interviews. At some point, what I only felt is this burden they are feeling, like what it feels to be waiting for someone that will take you away from your home, and you don't even know the date when they will come. And sometimes some people I have encountered in the stories that they have been choosing to leave by their will, because they said like, we don't want our parents to witness such a moment when they arrive. So this was going for like 4 years, from 2016 until 2020, until I met one of the fishermen, and his name was Heba. And he told me about a beautiful story that happened with him in the past. He told me that another fisherman came to him in the past, and he told him, I want to write a letter to God, to Allah. And he asked Heba like to write that letter for him because he didn't know how to write. And he told him like, why to write a letter to Allah? Like you can pray, you can ask him directly. There is no one in between. And he told him, no, but in our culture, the sea is a pure creature. Like he's one of Allah, beautiful creatures, that it takes all of your sorrow, all of your pain, all of your words directly to him. And he told him, I want to write this letter so I can throw it into the sea. And he told him, okay, tell me, what do you want to write? And he told, like, I have a very old boat and very rust equipment, and I have 3 daughters that I want to help them to get married. and I want you to give me as much fishes as you can this year so I can help them. And I want you to give me, not because of my equipment, not because of my boat, but because you created this universe and this is easy for you. So he said, like, he took that letter and he threw it into the sea, and then he was the most fisherman that he got fishes that year, and he helped his daughter to get married. So he was like a legend, like that man, his name was Ambaloti. So actually that story inspired me to change my whole practice, because I felt when I was documenting for 4 years, even if I know my intentions, even if I say like I have an honest perspective, but at the end of the day, I can easily feel an outsider. And no matter what I'm going to say, it's going to be me. It's going to be my education. It's going to be my perspective. And it requires years and sometimes a lifetime to know actually who you are and who do you fight for. And then I felt like, okay, I'm going to change the whole story again. And I'm going to start giving people a blank paper, asking them to write their last letters in an attempt to change the power dynamic a little bit and change perspective. And actually, after a couple of time, maybe like a couple of months, I mean, I started to gather those letters, and it was magnificent because when I started to read those letters, it was more authentic than what I was doing. For example, I found a letter that it was a man, he was writing about his childhood memories, and he wrote like his father didn't allow him to go to the sea because he was afraid, and then he was waiting for him every day in the house until his father parked his boat, and then he would jump on his lap and then try to help him to get the sardine or fishes out of the net. So his father would like give him a little bit of money to help him or to support him. And then he said, like, I would go every day to buy a candy that you always find a gift in it. And he said, I was looking for a ring so I can give it to the girl I love at the school until he found it. So when I read this memory, I was like, everyone has a different memory. Everyone has a different idea of what a home means. Everyone has memories that shapes his idea, his life, his personality, actually. And sometimes getting this from people or forbidding them from their memories or childhood memories or their life in general, it's like you are taking them from the roots, you are taking them from who they are. And what do we expect in return? So I felt like it's a message that I want to work with. And actually, hundreds of letters that was different. Like you find someone writing about his daughter, someone writing about the sea, someone writing about the daily life. Even Karam, the one that who inspired me with the project title, that she wrote like, I built my house with my husband and it only costed us like 25 Egyptian pound, which is like now like 50 cents. And she said, like, I remember he was very kind. Every day he was coming at me and wrapping me with a plastic wrap or bag so he can protect me from cold. And we would fill the holes of our house with paper to protect us from the wind. And she said, like, I remember I had a tree in front of our homes that I planted, and that tree, every morning I was sitting underneath it, reciting Quran, and when pigeons and birds gathered around me, it was my heaven. And then she wrote in the letters, now when they demolished that house, every day I would go and cry over my house until sometimes I feel like we were like Syria and there is like a missile bombed our home. And she said, like, now they put me in this temporary room so they can move me again far away from here. And she said, like, I don't care if they moved me again because here the doors do not know me and the windows do not recognize me. And her words was very, very powerful that it describes the whole project that people connected to their homes and their memories is not just an objects, it's a part of who they are. So all of these letters inspired me to change the whole narrative because I felt instead of just my perspective, there is hundreds of other perspective. It's like you are an individual narrative, an individual identity, and collecting other individual identities, you're creating like a collective narrative and a collective identity. So I started to ask people, how do you want to be represented? How do you want other to see you? Instead of me just photographing with my artistic practice or my artistic point of view, and everyone was choosing an image that represent him or a memory that he wants to live before he leave the area. So it brought like a new body of work that almost feels like I'm not in control anymore. And sometimes you get surprised when someone tells you, I want to photograph where my childs are playing because I'm always going to remember their laughs. Behind them is the sea and all of these memories. Other people asking me to take their archives, family archives. Other asking me like, I want to be photographed where me and my wife used to sit. And all of these images that they inspired me to take, it's actually not mine. I feel like it's built because it feels or represent to them more than it represent to me. And to be honest, if I had the power in my hand in my previous practices, I would like choose images that maybe beautify what happened, or maybe images that could represent my visual identity or my visual style. But to be honest, listening to their memories and the ways they wanted to be represented, I felt I cannot put myself anymore into the story. So this brought a whole new kind of visuals. And even sometimes people, we were finding archives and we find similarities in the history, that it was very nice to discuss how sometimes history repeat itself. Even in my investigation, sometimes we would find like pen pal, if you are aware of pen pal. Like my generation, I'm 29 years old now, but it's like messenger. Like you go to an office, you write a letter to someone living abroad, and if he sent you a letter, now you have like a pen pal, like a chat together. And it was magnificent because when I was investigating the letters, Al-Max, the village they were receiving, it was amazing. They have letters from Jamaica, from Japan, from China, from actually many countries. And in those letters, it's usually when we get to know a new person, you ask them these questions, like you ask them about your home, about their environment, how or where you're going to spend the summer, and all of these questions that represent who we are or where we are or where do we belong to. So it was part of the project collecting those letters, but also encountering with protagonists like Mahdy. He was the only painter in the areas that he was drawing on houses and boats, these symbolic. He didn't learn arts in any college, but he has a magnificent like sense of art. And he said like, I can draw to you all the symbols that I used to draw on houses because now they're gonna demolish all of these houses. And I gave him my old stuff, and he gave me like from 40 to 50 like a sketch of all of these symbols, original symbols. But also I was collecting maps of the area. And unfortunately, over years, like the first picture you can see on the left, it's from the archive, but over years of documenting, they demolished 1/3 of the area, and it was like 1,500 house, and it contained, of course, of a lot of families. Now it's a flat land, and the rest of the area they are demolishing soon. And actually, what came to my mind back then, because usually when I work with photography, I believe in the power of photography, but also I believe in the power of every human. That's why I don't care about from where we are coming, but I care about what we believe in, what we gather for. Because I believe like if I have the power of visual storytelling, maybe I could encounter in my life a foundation, an organization who have the power, for example, of money that they can do production, or another place who have the power of politics who can change something, or maybe individuals who have power so they can create something together if we believe in that project. So back then, like the government, what they were doing is they were defaming the residents. They were calling them smugglers and drug dealers. So when they demolish their neighborhood, no one will feel compassion. And usually it happened in Egypt in our media a lot. It happens a lot. So what came to me is I want to create an interactive website. And in that interactive website, I will use like the letters, I will use the investigations, the research, I will use like my photographs, everything I have collected so I can, put them on the map, but at the same time, like to make them visible and kind of creating an encounter history. So we created this website.
ما يجب أن تعرفه عن شاطئ.
So you can visit the website because it's going to take a lot of time to explain everything. You will find it in my website. But what we had is we added their handwritten last letter, but also in the website, you can hear them reading the story with their voices. And actually, we created like a profile for every protagonist. So you can send him or her a letter if you want. So we kind of create a conversation. So actually, this project won World Press in 2023. And the idea was, with that exposure, we can use it. And I asked the curator in the exhibition, because all of this, it's a big exposure you get. I asked her just to put a desk and papers and a pen and just to exhibit the protagonist letter. And then we will see what people will write. And it was magnificent because after like 1 year, I got like 2 boxes full of letters. It was amazing, thousands of letters that addressed to the people of Almax. When we investigated, of course, the English, because they are in German, French, Japan, and some language that even I don't understand what is this language so far. But the one I managed to investigate is the English. You find people writing about the idea of home. What does a home mean? And you find other people describing a similar experience they had in their country. Other people writing a personal letter to one of the protagonists and addressed to him, and they leave their numbers, they leave their email for any help. So actually, this created a kind of a global conversation. And I guess at the end of the day, we all share the idea of home. We feel the same things, or we have the same senses that we feel almost the same stuff. So I got those letters and the project kept developing. But one of the protagonists, he said like, now you are one of us, and he made me a fishing ID. So I become one of them, which was amazing when you spend many years, like now it's 10 years in the project. It gave me a new perspective to document in the sea. And actually I made that for a couple of trips. We collected like over 800 archival image from the protagonists. They have been donating it to scan it, to save it from being lost. And actually I was documenting those texture. But at some point I got a letter, and it was from a woman called Maisara, and she wrote something very powerful. She said like, I make my son touch everything and smell everything before we leave, so it could be embedded in his memory. And I was like, how to represent that visually? And it came this idea later, like about what is a broken memory. And a broken memory in a broken society, when we are trying to breaking the present of the protagonist by moving them, by taking them away from their roots, is kind of, we are making a new generation that doesn't know the roots. And I thought like, if I break the present with the past, somehow I can get a new feeling of broken memory. Because usually when you show someone the archive of the neighborhood, they get this nostalgic feeling, and usually they beautify the past. But again, the past was like a moment, like any other moment. And what's important is now. So it inspired me, her letter, to create a new body of work where we try to merge the archive with their actual broken houses. And we came with that work to kind of present it visually. And one last thing is the outcome of the project we decided, and it came out last year, is to create a photo book to work as a physical evidence of what's happening. And I think I don't have a lot of time to speak about it. And I'm sorry if I spoke very quickly and very briefly about a 10 years project. It's always difficult to me to just speak in 20 minutes or a specific time. But anyway, I don't usually like to give advices. But if I have only one thing to you is always believe in the narrative that surrounds you and you are close to. I'm always, when I'm teaching, I'm saying like, you don't have to go far to find a narrative. Stories is always there behind us, in our family, in our neighborhood, in our societies. And it always will be just stories until we go and encounter those stories. And what I always advise is when you go to a place or a new narrative, is surrender to a place. Maybe you will not add something new when you go with your ego or your knowledge, but when you let go and you go to that new environment and to that narrative and you say just a simple words that I don't know what's happening. I want the place or people to educate me about what's happening. I think the place itself reveals the narrative to you, like the Baluti story that inspires the whole project. And this is my only advice because, again, when we surrender, it brings like authentic narrative of the place and instead of just what we know. Thank you for listening, and I'm sorry again for speaking too fast. And now I will pass the mic to Ed.
Hello. Thank you so much, Mr. Mahdy. Thank you so much, Mr. Mahdy, for this wonderful session, and we're extremely sorry for the time shortage that we had. We would love to have you here one day for a longer workshop. And now let's move on to Mr. Kashi. Mr. Kashi, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So yes, let's get started. Thank you.
Okay, and excuse me. And you can see my screen.
Yes.
All right,
Yes,
cool.
we can.
Well, all right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you, Nafis, Mahdy. You're incredible. My God, you guys were just, it's too bad he had to rush. And I can't fit 50 years into 20 minutes. So anyway, I'm gonna, but, and thank you to the honorable university officials for having us here today. So let's just jump right in. I prepared a small selection of works from my career to show just like a small glimpse into my arc as a visual storyteller and as a documentarian. You know, unlike Mahdi, he represents like a fresh way of looking at things and of utilizing visual storytelling, documentary practice, photojournalism, if you like, into a more collaborative and intimate form of storytelling. And as a mentor to photographers all over the world, I can, he represents the best of this new trend, if you like. So I come from, I guess you would say, a more traditional approach of, I was born in America. I was first generation American. My parents are from Baghdad, from Iraq, and they moved to New York in 1940. And so I was born in New York City. I grew up as an American kid, but and then eventually realized that my past was much richer than just being an American. Anyway, so this first body of work I want to share is really the first in-depth personal documentary project. And I chose to go to Northern Ireland, and this was during the Troubles, where it still existed the conflict between the Catholic and Protestants there, and of course the British military's involvement. And one could say, as a people who endured this, Ireland was Britain's first colonial escapade. And so when I got there, I knew about the Irish Republican Army, the British military, the Catholic minority that was discriminated against, but I didn't know about the Protestants there. And so that's the group of people that I chose to focus on over a 3-year period where I just returned multiple times. And it was the first time where I sort of understood, the importance of immersing in a community and repeated visits and really over, again, a 3-year period, developing relationships and also a greater understanding. And this is what I love about this work, because I've, I wanted to be a writer, and I realized I wasn't a very good writer. So I somehow thought of photography, and thank goodness I did, because it synthesized my social and political passions, which were very strong growing up in New York in the 1960s, the 1970s, around the whole sort of sprouting of progressive movements of women's rights and civil rights and environmental rights. All those things were happening as I was growing up in the New York area. And so I brought those passions, those concerns, the desire to engage, which is really also reflected in Mahdy's work, to engage with the world, with the community, with the other. And anyway, so working in Northern Ireland, I learned so much that I've carried up to this point of how I wanted to work. And also this unquenchable thirst and curiosity to learn, to this day, to learn, to understand better, to whether it's an issue or a place or a culture. And so this was really where this project is really where I sort of learned, in a sense, the template for how I would work up to this point. It's also the project that broke me into National Geographic magazine and began about a 25-year run of working consistently with them. I worked on about 17 features. This was in the before times when we would actually have, months of field time. That's not the case anymore. My first project for them was on the Kurdish people, and this was a story that I proposed to them. And it's really also the way that I worked with National Geographic, where the majority of the stories I did, I proposed them. Or it got so good at some point, when they would give me assignments, they were exactly the areas or the issues that I wanted to focus on. They don't publish stuff like this anymore. But anyway, I was very fortunate to be in this period where they still, supported photojournalism, journalism, and reporting, and going out into the world to explore tough issues, even though they're a very apolitical publication. The other thing that the Kurdish people brought me to my homeland. As I said earlier, I did not grow up as an Iraqi American, or I just was an American kid, that rock and roll, all that stuff, and going to Iraq and Turkey and Syria and Iran and Lebanon. That in this project, it brought me to where my parents came from, and also one of the many great things of being able to do this work is our own edification, our own education. Excuse me, where we get to learn about the world, and in my case, learn a little bit about my family's background and history. On this project, I work in 8 different countries over a 26-week period. I ultimately published a book from this work, When the Borders Bleed. And this project also sort of furthered my understanding of how I wanted to work, which was long-term, long form, dealing with issues that I cared about. And this is really important for the folks in this audience who are thinking about or are already doing this work, is, your greatest work will come from what you care most about. And hopefully what you care about, others will care about as well. I even went to Germany to look at the Kurdish diaspora. These were Kurdish gangs in Berlin. And then in 2005, after the United States invaded Iraq, and I started to work there independently on my own, and I realized that the northern part of Iraq, Kurdistan, was the safest part of the country, while the rest of the country was just falling apart with tremendous violence, and the birth of ISIS, Al Qaeda, excuse me, and then ISIS. Not the birth of Al Qaeda, of ISIS. It just became for me too dangerous to work there. So I pitched another story to the Geographic to look at northern Iraq during the war. So we're going to be major pivot, go to America. After years of working abroad, I realized I wanted to turn my camera on my own. And as I looked around, what would be one of the great themes of my lifetime in the grand tradition of documentary photography, from the 100 years or so of that and this is work that over that time changed laws, especially in the United States. My ambition was to create a body of work that would last for a long time. And aging was an issue that just kept on coming up as I sort of scanned the horizon. So I spent with my wife, Julie Winokur, who was then a writer and then became a filmmaker. In the course of this project, we went to 25 of the 50 states. Again, almost an 8-year period. We looked at everything from, the gift of longevity, senior Olympics and senior pro rodeo. And, this is Gloria Barnes. She was a model in Manhattan with Ford's elite division, or the motorcycle gangs, so they're called the retreads. One of the many great things about America culturally are these like subcultures, these subgroups that form in such a big different kinds of people. I also looked at like the issues of caregiving, which to me were the most precious and important issues to look at in the context of this grand theme. How does a society grow older? And all of our societies now are growing older. Anyway, this is Ike. He was 100 years old, living in a single room occupancy hotel in San Francisco. I don't have enough time to get into all the details, but there was also some frontline reporting. This is in Washington, D.C. The Veterans Administration had created this, primary home-based care. For folks in, let's say, Bangladesh, you guys probably just take care of your elders. I hope you're not changing that beautiful communal tradition or familial community tradition. But in the United States, we have a great ability to destroy um, tradition and structures, family, community. But then we also have a great ability to rebuild and rethink things. Anyway, so sorry, I don't have enough time to get into all the details in these pictures. One of the other issues I wanted to look at was prisoners, elderly prisoners. And again, working on a project of this length, of this magnitude, was life altering, quite frankly. This was so beautiful in a Walmart in West Virginia. This is Arden on the left, who is 90, and Warren, who's 76. They met at a Walmart. Quick story is the younger man moved in to take care of Arden and his 90-year-old wife. And this is the moment when Maxine, his wife, was dying. These are the scenes. I photographed 4 death scenes in the course of this project. When people allow you in to these intimate moments, it's breathtaking. It's so humbling. And these are some of the deepest experiences as a human being that I'll carry for the rest of my life. So as I said, this project changed me and it made me a better human being. So when my wife's father, Herbie, who was living in New Jersey we were living in San Francisco. This is a lot of detail. I hope you're bearing with me. Anyway, we decided to move our family back to New Jersey, to the East Coast, to take care of him. After all I learned, Julie didn't need this education. She was already a great human being, but it taught me that there was no way we were going to warehouse Herbie. Warehousing meaning putting him in an assisted living facility or a nursing home, because he was showing signs of dementia and Parkinson's disease. And it was clear he couldn't live alone anymore. So we moved across the country. We moved him into our home, and he spent the last 2 years of his life with us. He died in our home with us around him. And again, one of the many gifts of doing this work is having these kinds of monumental experiences. And so we were also we have 2 kids that were then like 8 and 11 years old. And it was the first time that we had turned the camera on ourselves. That's not what we do. That's not what we had done up to that point. And it was, again, another sort of humbling educational experience. I feel it really sensitized me now to my impact on people when I have a camera or a video camera in my hand. And it might seem strange, but I'm actually more shy now on the streets with a camera than I was 30 or 40 years ago when I was a punk and I thought I could do whatever I wanted and the camera gave me license. And now I'm much more like, I don't want to upset people, which is kind of strange. You'd think it would be the other way around. All right. Last body of work I want to share in this time we have is my most recent project, which I'm actually in my 13th year on, and it's looking at the impact of chronic kidney disease on mostly poor agricultural workers around the world. I've worked in El Salvador, Nicaragua, Peru, India, Sri Lanka, and Qatar and Nepal. And so these are some images from the project. And this work represents what I call advocacy journalism. And this is really at the heart of the way I work now when I can. And most of my personal projects, in fact, I'm going with Julie in 2 weeks to India to work on a new project looking at the impact of heat stress on female workers in India. But advocacy work is about not just raising awareness, which is a beautiful thing that we're able to do. And someone like Mahdy has done it in this most gorgeous and poetic, beautiful way, But it's really about aligning with, and this is really important if you want to do this work, is the right collaborators. I am an activist at heart, but I'm not an activist. I'm a storyteller. I'm a journalist. I'm a documentarian. So I was able to find the organizations that are advocating for the change in this issue, which has killed tens of thousands of people around the world at this point. And it's an underreported issue. And that was the other reason I was attracted to working on it. This is a sugarcane worker in Nicaragua. He died 3 days later. I photographed multiple funerals, and this sugarcane worker in Nicaragua it's interesting. The older generation, they contracted this disease, but most of them survived. They just had to stop working. What's so chilling about this is now workers in their 20s and 30s are contracting this disease and dying. But one of the beautiful things that's happened in the course of this project is the small NGO that I've collaborated a lot with. They came up with a very simple solution, which now we hear about all the time, which is rest, water, and shade. Super simple, not complicated, does not have to break the budgets of these companies. And by providing these simple, what I would view as basic human rights or labor rights, not only has the incidence of the disease gone down, but also their productivity has increased. In the course of this project, I've done about 5 short documentaries as well as a number of photo essays. We've really had an impact on the labor laws and practices of sugarcane companies in Mesoamerica and Central America. This is in Nepal, where, so in 2022, we decided to pitch a new story, and Time Magazine went for it, looking at the impact of this disease on Nepalese workers who are going to Qatar to build the World Cup facilities. So we were sort of pinning it around the World Cup, which was in Qatar that year. And they had to shift it from June to November because of the heat. I don't need to tell you guys about heat. You know it very well living where you are. But extreme heat. So anyway, so in some of the villages we encountered in the sort of southern agricultural part of Nepal, 70% of the men are immigrating to, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE to look for better work as it's harder and harder for them to make a living in the agricultural sector. This is a widow of a man who died of this disease, who had gone to Qatar to work on the World Cup facilities. And then we went to Qatar to look at the situation there. So this is right before the World Cup. This is actually the main stadium that the World Cup final was held. So this is an example again of I worked for a decade on specifically the issue of kidney disease, a very specific kind of kidney disease. that is caused by repeated dehydration, probably some exposure to agrochemicals. And in the case of places like India, even as they have to dig deeper for their water wells, they're bringing up arsenic and silicates that affect the kidney. Sorry, don't mean this to be a biology class. But again, this is why I love doing this work, is that we get to learn. We get to learn about things. So anyway, um, so I morphed my project has morphed from chronic kidney disease to looking at the impact of heat stress on workers. And it was crazy in Qatar. I mean, well, in Fahrenheit, 120 degrees. What is that? 50 degrees in centigrade, and 90% humidity. Just absurd to even be outside, let alone to be working in construction. So then a month or so ago, I returned to Guatemala and El Salvador to continue my work on the kidney disease issue, but sort of showing how the difference between a place like Guatemala, where the intervention has not happened, and then El Salvador, where they have intervened with rest water and shade. Sugarcane is just brutal, brutal work. So this is a young worker in Guatemala who got sick with the disease. This is his mother. Just horribly, just a terrible situation, for these folks. And this is a woman, a widow in El Salvador whose husband died just in December from this disease. And this is an example of the intervention. So simple. Set up a tent in the field, and instead of having these workers work straight through in very hot weather for 6, 7 hour shifts, they work for an hour, a whistle blows, they have shade, they have proper hydration, they go back to work, and this is their day. And these guys were happier, they're like singing in the fields, not to romanticize it, but like they were healthier, they were much better shape and much better mood, and the incidence of the disease has gone down. So again, as in going back to this idea of advocacy work, where and when we can do it, it's amazing to think that as a storyteller, I can contribute in whatever minor or small way it may be, contribute to making things better. And what I've also learned is that what we do does matter. We humanize a situation. You can hear tens of thousands of people have died from this disease, but it's just numbers, it's statistics. But when you see the people and you meet them and you hear their stories, it really does make a difference. And it makes a difference to the healthcare workers and the epidemiologists and lawmakers and politicians and business folks. So I'm going to end with this completely different thing, because Nafis had sort of indicated this idea of going from maybe the outsider view to well, the insider view. But so a couple of years ago, I decided to do a mixed media project, working with a colleague who is a painter and a colleague who's a digital artist, and I wanted to explore the issues of fatherhood. My father died when I was 10, and I am now father. Being an immigrant in America, and baseball. I would say the New York Yankees kind of babysat me as a kid after my dad died, and my mom was super depressed. She came over with very little education from Iraq, and when he died, she was it was like the Cinderella story gone sour. And I was alone with her, and the New York Yankees really babysat me. And so as a young kid, I developed this passion for baseball. And I wish it was cricket. It would be more relevant for you guys probably. But anyway, and then my son went on to actually play Division I college baseball. So anyway, so I decided to explore these sort of three issues. And what I did was work with collage. So that's my father, a picture of him from Iraq, like in the 1930s, and my son and me. And then I had my friend, the painter, take the materials that baseball players use, rosin, sunflower seeds, so forth and so on, and then paint with it. So it was a mixture of archival pictures. That's me in the middle. Boy, I look like a brat. And so this is something that I'll probably never do again, but occasionally as someone who works in a much more, you know, placed in, you know, real people in real time in the real world, trying to document that for not only to make great images, but to have impact. This was a sort of a lark, if you like, of, you know, sort of, you know, flexing other muscles. And when we do that as artists, creators, whatever you want to call us, you know, it expands our horizons, it expands our abilities. You know, I learned something in the course of this project that will probably inform something else I do down the road. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. Did I make it in 20 minutes?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kashi, for this wonderful display of your work. It has truly been an honor having you both here. So I would like to thank you both on behalf of all the students and everyone present here for sharing your expertise with us. It was truly very insightful, and the story that each of the pictures had were very, very inspiring. So we all learned a lot from here. So thank you so much. I would like to have a huge round of applause for both of them. Okay, so now I would like to move on to the question answer session. So our sir, Mr. Gazi Nafis Ahmed, has the first question. So we will move on to that.
All right, thank you both Mahdy and Kashi. I would want to say this again, that it's a privilege for us to have both of your presence, and just to make you guys sure that, you know, people back in the West and Europe, they get hundreds and thousands of dollars just to hear them out for an hour or two. So it's a privilege that doing this for us. Thank you once again. I have a question, Ed. It's a bit on the photographic side. So when you're in front of a situation, you've shown various different projects from around the world, including old age people. When you're in front of a situation, there's always more happening that we finally see. And how do you decide what not to photograph? That's for you, Ed. I'll also throw the question for Mahdy. So, Mahdy, my question for you is, you know, seeing you are familiar with working with close communities, particularly from Egypt and neighboring countries. So, when working closely with communities, there are always many possible stories. How do you decide which story becomes the story and what gets left out? Yes, thank you.
Shall I go first or?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do I choose what not to photograph? I think, is that the question? That's a tough one. That's a brain twister. Okay. I mean, generally because of the way that I work, which is trying to tell stories and, you know, trying to make multidimensional images when possible. I'm always looking for the visual elements that will help, that will let me tell the story. So I often find photography is a process of sort of addition and subtraction, you know, that because I work, I don't set things up, you know, I come into a scene, and most of the time there's a lot of visual crap, a lot of things I don't want, and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate through that. And a lot of it is, you know, where do you stand? Where do you position the camera? As well as what moment do you actually make an image, so that I can basically, it's a reductionist process. I can end up having just the elements I want in the frame and create a relationship between them. So, and all of that happens in nanoseconds, you know, generally. So yeah, so a lot of it is just sort of deciding, you know, what I need in the frame and what I want out of the frame. I hope that answers your question. And I would just say that's very different. That's very different than just sort of walking down the street and looking for beautiful images, great light, interesting characters, not that that's easy, but I mean it's a fundamentally different exercise that is much more like it's cerebral as much as it is visual. And what I find very interesting, and in some ways I think Mahdy's work is also informed by this, is that even though my work is visual, everything emanates from words.
Yes.
Thank you, Ed. I got my answer.
For your question, Nafis, I always think about the structure we use to show our projects or our stories. And sometimes it's limiting because, for example, when you are encountering a magazine or a website, sometimes you have a limit to show the story, which is I don't mind because at the end of the day, you cannot put everything, especially when you work on long-term projects. For 10 years, you cannot put everything for people like to just read and see. So sometimes what I do is I divide those stories depend on the structure itself. Like the interactive website for me was to serve to put people on the map and also to amplify their voices and to get to make or to work as an encounter history. So this is the point I want to defend, So I try to do everything to make it work. But sometimes, of course, when you are working, I guess some stories you encounter not always right stories. And I think it's our responsibility to also investigate what we hear because what we do is sometimes is sensitive because, for example, sometimes you encounter people that they tell you a false narrative just because they saw a camera or they saw that you have a power of amplifying their voices. So again, I feel like it's not just you are a guy holding a camera, but I think over experience is you have to learn other things like body language, NLP, other knowledge of reading and sensing what people are saying. And sometimes, of course, like you choose a stories that represent the majority of people if you don't have a space. But for me, because I have more freedom, I don't follow a specific structure. If you look at my website, you will find every project has a different structure. It depends how it's going to serve the people. One project I do exhibition because we're going to sell it and those prints will help the community. Other projects, like you saw the interactive website, and now I had the opportunity to create a photo book where in that structure it could live in universities, in bookstores, and of course the individuals and the protagonists have a copy of it. So yeah, I sometimes I divide it, and the easiest way for me, I always say like Instagram is my gallery. So I post something and then I have 1,000 view per day maybe or a visitor. So I'm happy, I'm satisfied, and that's my gallery. So I'm always posting. And for the community, actually, we created a Facebook group. It's called Al Max is Loved by Millions. And then it's become now thousands of subscription into that group. And then we are posting those letters that we are receiving abroad to them after we translate it. So sometimes I just divide it because I cannot put it in one way. Yes.
Thank you so much for both your answers. I have a question, and part of it's quite personal because I really thank you for sharing your personal stories and giving us a glimpse into your lives. And I'm a diaspora kid. I grew up in Atlanta, and then I moved back to the motherland. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Ed, is how does an Iraqi heritage, how does this, having many different minority hats in a majority country like the United States, how does that permeate into your work? How does that identity show up, if at all? And how does that come through the lens? And then Mahdy, I have a question for you after.
So it's interesting. I feel this, for lack of a better term, identity politics that have started to pervade things in the last decade or so. I feel like I came in late to that because I grew up with like assimilation. My father spoke 7 languages and all they taught me was English. What a crime, right? I mean, especially given what I ended up doing. And I can't tell you how many comical moments I've had working in like Iraq or Syria, where like the security, the mukhabarat, the security apparatus, they don't believe I don't speak Arabic. Also, just to complicate things further, my family is Jewish, even though I don't practice any religion, but that's the tradition. So then they would know that, and it became so complicated. And quite frankly, it reinforced my frustration with religion, not culturally and in terms of ritual, but in terms of the way it's used politically. That when I went to Iraq for the first time, and I was like, and I'd go to like a gathering and I'd be like, oh, that's what my parents' parties looked like in New York in the 1960s. The men were with worry beads, and the mothers were like reading the Turkish coffee cups and all that. I was like, but because of damn religion, I can't actually um, be candid about who I am. I often had to lie and deflect on that. So that's when I'm in the Middle East. In America, it's weird. It's like, they'll be like, "Where are you from?" And then I'm thinking, how should I answer that? Especially after the recent Iraq war and, all the stuff that's happened since 9/11. So basically, I came to the party late and I wasn't able to use my person of color thing to advance my career. But anyway, and now I just appreciate that we can talk more openly about this, and but in a very beautiful way, that we get to learn more about who are we actually. That yeah, we're Americans, or in your case, you were from Atlanta, but you're Bangladeshi, right? I'm just saying that I celebrate this sort of the richness of our histories, and I love that we can be more open about it. Unfortunately, under the current regime in the United States, we're backsliding on that. I'll leave it at that.
Yes, that is very true. Mahdy, Bangladesh is at the forefront of climate vulnerability. We are one of the, case studies of a country that is continuously and will be very much affected by differences in weather patterns and climate change. And when you were talking about this intentional redevelopment of land that you have photographed and so beautifully put together, it just made me think about, the sand filling that happens in Bangladesh, the things that we're doing for urbanization. And I wanted to ask, your work really spoke to me. It's very powerful. And what goes after, kind of, in the sense that, these projects, you're putting these stories to the forefront. Is something happening with that? Are people engaging with that? Are politicians being aware of this? And if so, how?
Yeah, I guess so. Like when the project actually won, like in 2023 of Max, what happened is this encounter narrative that happened because what people get from the media is they are smugglers and drug dealers. But what happened when they start to read the protagonist letters, and I was like, it's simple as that. They are human like us. They are eating. They are getting their daily life. It's similar to what we do. So why you call them smugglers and drug dealers? And remember, there were like fights on social media about what media are calling the protagonists and what's actually there. And then it encouraged other journalists to go back and start working, which is the beautiful part when you see other people going there and trying to show other stories than the stories I have made, which, to be honest, it was magnificent, at least to change part of the history. Because, like our media, and I'm saying this loud, it's corrupted now. Like there is no honesty in any of what they are sharing. Even like my friends who work in newspaper, they are always telling me and showing me messages that this is what you're going to publish today, this is the next week, and whatsoever. So I feel like with that work, at least, or those stories, is you are leaving something for the new generation, because of protagonists are afraid of that. They have been saying to me, like, what if our children grow up and say that we didn't fight for the land, but we are fighting for the land, but the system is more powerful. And to be honest, in the old days, or maybe when I started long-term projects, and I was like fighting very hard and taking everything on my shoulder, I started to feel, but also I have to be, how you call it, to come back to realities that I cannot do everything by my own. But at least if I saved part of the truth, part of the history, it could be there, you know. And again, like in Egypt, there is no system to support you. And I mean by system, like foundation, organization to complete what we do. I was actually just discussing this with Ed. If you are part of an international collective, sometimes this moves things a little bit. It happened in my first long-term project when we did a project about a cement factory that is almost killing people. And then children were born with asthma since the first day. And because of this project was published on the New York Times, the factory got millions, you know, of attacks from people, you know, from media, and people were suddenly, okay, we care about what happened now. And then the government forced them to install filters to the chimney. And then we started to see a glimpse of a change. So there's no direct answer, to be honest, to what you say, but we try as much as we can. And for me, if I made an exhibition, I said it's temporary. Now I want to create a book to be like a physical evidence for more years. Whatever happened, you know, I go for it just to serve the project and the people. If this answer a little bit.
No, that's great. I mean, the best we can do is to try. And I think that's one of the things that we're all doing with Gazi ourselves. One of the things that we keep doing is bringing these dialogues together so that different narratives can be shared and different perspectives. And more than one story can exist at the same time, just as more than one truth can exist. And so this is important to showcase the different sides of Egypt, the different sides of one's identity. With that, I'll give the mic to him, and I want to invite you and Ed, if you're in London, June 2nd to 4th, please come to Bangla House at South by Southwest London. It's the first ever, and it will be our first global platform to talk about different narratives of what Bangladesh and the diaspora are like. So please do come.
That's nice. Thank you.
All right, thank you once again. And I want to thank especially to Amreen as well for being here. Amreen, my family goes back to the 60s and 70s, but I'll give the floor to the audience right now, to the students. So please, whoever has questions here.
Here we can see a lot of show of hands. So we will start from here. Anisha, yeah.
Hope you can hear me. Before, I'd like to ask the audience to speak loudly into the microphone so our speakers can hear you.
First of all, I would like to thank you, Mr. Aid and Mahdy. It was a wonderful session. We are truly honored that we attend your seminar. So my question is for Mr. Aid. You often describe yourself as a visual artist. So my question is, at what point does a photojournalist move from the neutral observer to an active advocate for change?
Yes, so I get asked that a lot. You know, it depends on. So, for instance, if I've been commissioned by the New York Times or National Geographic, you know, a media outlet, then I'm approaching it with as much objectivity as possible, regardless of whatever biases or opinions, personal opinions I may have about that particular person or that place or that issue. But when I'm working on my own work, I just feel that we're at a point where this two-side isms of journalism don't get us anywhere. You know, that it's frustrating when I read an article where it talks about a problem and then there's the but. And then I'm like, no. Like, for instance, with the kidney disease or the cement factory, there's not two sides. That industrial complex is affecting the people who live there. Now, I'm not saying that factory should be shut down or they shouldn't make a profit or the owners shouldn't become wealthy. That's not the point. The point is, do your work and keep your people safe.
Chris.
Keep your community safe. And yeah, maybe if you don't make as much money or as much profit, sorry, tough luck, but we can't continue to operate in this way where we have like expendable people. So anyway, so for me, that's the passion and the belief that I bring in when I can. Obviously, not all issues, you know. Um, there was a time where I believed that I could bridge the chasm between Islam and the West. I don't think I did a very good job, but that was the hubris of youth. But no, I'm serious. Like, you know, we pick our battles. Hopefully, we pick them intelligently, and so anyway, so I hope that answers your question. Is that when I'm on assignment, I'm behaving as like what I view as a proper journalistic practice of trying to be objective and all that. And when I'm working on something that is more of an advocacy nature, it's not that there aren't two sides per se, but that I'm advocating. Generally, it's for people. It's about human rights. It's about labor rights. It's about women's rights. It's about whatever it may be. That how do we make the world a better place? And I know that's a huge statement, and I'm just a humble little person, but I believe we can all contribute in our little ways, and it cumulatively makes a difference.
Thank you so much. I got my answer. All right, thank you. Now let's move on to the next question. We have Nafis over here.
Hello, Mr. Kashi and Mr. Mahdy. Good afternoon. So my question is for Mr. Mahdy. You could see your work often involved with the community in storytelling process. So how does this collaborative approach change the final narrative compared to the traditional outsider development?
If you can please, someone repeats the question again in the mic because some words I couldn't hear.
So my question is for Mr. Mahdy. How does this collaborative approach change the final narrative compared to the traditional outsider journalism?
I'm sorry, like some words is not getting, so if just someone could speak to them. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yes. That's nice.
Yeah.
Your work often involves the community in the storytelling process. How does this collaborative approach change the final narrative compared to traditional outsider journalism? That was your question.
Yes. Okay, so first of all, I'm not against outsider point of view at all, because sometimes you can witness something that you live it every day and you didn't notice it. So sometimes it happen and they bring a new perspective. So I'm not against it, but even I live in the same country and it's my community and it's easy to feel an outsider. Why? Because again, like our parents raise us in a different way. Our education is different. Sometimes the movies you watch, the music you hear, and all of that, it affects actually who you are. It's now in our new modern world, it's easy to see like people are similar because of what we perceive is almost the same. But for me, like I feel it's, of course, it changed everything. As I said, like the story of Ambaloti, who told me about a beautiful things in our culture in Alexandria that I wasn't aware of at all, which is writing letters to the sea. And I think I found it's more authentic to work with that method. But sometimes, for example, in my long-term project, I remember I was in Ola house, one of the protagonists, and she told me that the cement and the dust is like everywhere. It's like the unwanted friend. We eat it, we smell it, we find it in our closet. And in order for me to feel that, I had to live there for 3 years. And actually, part of my staying, I started to feel that because I already have asthma, but even my case is very light, like I don't really suffer from asthma. But when you are there and smelling, you kind of get close to her feelings. And by immersing yourself there, I started to feel like, okay, it's going to affect my visual language because now I decided in that project, or later I decided the project will be black and white to show the audience the cement all the time. But also at the same time, I don't want you to see the color of house. It's not important at all. I want you to just feel what's happening. And black and white was decided because of her narrative and also because of
All right, that's great. Do we have another question from over here? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for this wonderful session. My question is to Mr. Kashi. You have been photographing people for decades now. So my question would be, the people you photograph, do you think you owe anything to them? And my second question would be that in this world where people have gone numb, there are so many things happening, so many atrocities everywhere. So how do you actually, so your work as a photojournalist, how do you make people care? How do you make an actually a difference? That's all.
Was that to me? I'm sorry, it was a bit garbled. Was that
Yeah.
so the first question is, what do I owe the people I photograph?
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
think you owe anything to people you photograph?
I mean, honestly, no. I mean, I'm doing a job, but obviously, but I'm a pretty sensitive and very generous person by nature. So, I'm always trying to figure out. I mean, what's beautiful about the digital age now is it's really easy for me to send JPEGs to people or share work, but most of the times they don't like the pictures I take of them. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, I mean, I think mostly the way I serve what what you're saying is by being decent and being respectful and honoring them and not trying to retain their dignity both in my process of making images and in the images I make of them. I mean, there are times where, I forge relationships with some of the people that I photograph, especially over time. It's a complicated, I mean, sir, your question in some ways cuts to a really uncomfortable truth about doing this work. And in a way, like I not to highlight Mahdy so much, but I think what he's doing is a way of avoiding of coming up with a beautiful answer to that question, but it is one of the uncomfortable realities of doing this work. Every day I go out, when I go out and I'm working, whether it's for a 1 hour assignment or a 10-year project, I'm meeting people and we have we have these most incredible and deep and interactions, and we might even forge tremendous bonds in these short periods of these interactions. But then we move on, and I don't. It would be humanly impossible for me, emotionally, physically, psychologically, to maintain relationships with everyone over the course of 50 years of doing this work. So it's also a reason that this work is not right for everybody, because it's as I say to people when I'm teaching or mentoring, it's like it's a very strange profession. It's a very strange form of work. We dip into people's lives sometimes when they're in their most vulnerable moments. You know, I don't like the idea we take, but we create, we collaborate with them, and then we disappear. So, like I say, there's some people I've had relationships for over 30 years. I've maintained it, but for most folks, it's like, yeah, you come and you go, and you just hope that there's a great quote by Cartier-Bresson, the great French photographer. It was something along the lines of, if my assignment was to photograph tulips, I don't want to leave footprints in the bed. And I thought that was a very simple but beautiful way of putting what I'm trying to express. The other question about, sorry, what was the second part?
The question was that with all the things that's going on, with all the atrocities, how do you make a difference where people have gone numb actually, and they just swipe away, they just swipe your screen and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I don't know if people have gone numb. I do agree that with the tsunami of imagery and stories and information that we're bombarded with, especially with these phones now, there's no question that there's a certain amount of cognitive dissonance, numbness, if you like. But I also feel that when we make images and we make stories that are strong and that have power, there is a reaction. It might not be from everybody, but there is a reaction. Even President Trump reacts to stuff. I mean, just saying, sorry to bring him up. But or like in Mahdy's case, or my case, where the work we've done has changed, the way factories operate, and that's one of the elements of this paradigm, going back to advocacy work, is not only just to create it with my collaborators, but also then to get it into the media. So when the New York Times or National Geographic or the BBC or the Guardian or whomever, I don't know if there's a Bangladeshi equivalent, locally, when that story appears, that it's impossible to ignore it, which is why authoritarians want to diminish the media, because they understand the power of it. And that's why democracies, or whatever we were going to call these forms of society that are somewhat whatever, there's civil society, we need information. We need the free flow of information. That's how we hold individuals, corporations, politicians, so forth accountable. So I do believe the system still works in as dysfunctional as it has become, as siloed as it has become because of social media and the algorithms that we do not control. I still think we can have impact. So. But it's a huge challenge. It's a much bigger challenge than it was 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. No question about it.
All right. Thank you so much. So we have one last question from over here. Yeah.
Hello, Ed. Hello, Nafis. So I have a question for both of you. It's the same. The question is, as you both are photojournalists, so while working with vulnerable communities, how do you navigate the balance between creating compelling images and maintaining ethical responsibility towards your subjects?
Do you want to go first, Mahdy, or me?
Yeah, I want to go first, but I want to make sure that I heard the question correctly. If you can repeat it, or because sometimes there is a lag in the sound and some words fell. But what was the question again?
Oh, so I would repeat it again. The question that I asked was, as a photojournalist, while working with vulnerable communities, how do you navigate the balance between creating compelling images and maintaining ethical responsibility towards your subject? Yeah, that's it.
I'm not sure if I'm a photojournalist. Sometimes I feel like I'm still in my journey to figure out who am I, but I'm trying to be a human first. And I'm always saying, or I believe in, I never or I can't separate who I am from what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, it's affecting what we do, not just in photography, but everywhere. So for example, I'm gonna give you a situation sometimes, and I'm sure like Mr. Ed is going through that. Sometimes also with all of your experience, you encounter a situation or a family or individuals and they disagree to be photographed. And sometimes they attack you because they don't understand, for example, what you are doing. But at the end of the day, you have to respect that. You have to respect their privacy. Of course, ethics is important of what we do, but ethics also it's something subjective. Sometimes you encounter situations that is difficult to solve at the moment and you learn from it. So from my side, to be honest, again, I always bring it to simplicity. Like, can I photograph my family the same way? Can I photograph myself the same way? And if my heart answers that question easy, like I can do it, then I start to negotiate, not to force anyone to do it. But if I didn't feel it, I've never, forced anyone to pose for a specific thing. Or if I'm doing a portrait, usually I'm asking people now, this is how I'm changing my practice. How do you want to be represented? Because I started to be aware if I started to be aware of if I am seeing someone, I'm also seen at the same moment from the other side. And I want to make sure first that how they see me. So this requires a lot of time. That's why most of my project takes minimum 3 years till 10 years as this project. And ethics is very important to be transparent with what you do. I remember when I made this first dummy of the book, I went to one of the protagonists. He was a teacher and he was working with almost like a similar format to his student. And I remembered he threw it into my face and he said, "What is this?" And I don't want to mention the word he said, but he didn't like it. He didn't buy it. He said like, "No, it doesn't represent us. Doesn't represent our culture." And I told him why. I made it with this narrative structure. I made it with this kind of paper. And this was like 3 years ago. And he was like, "We don't care. We don't understand what is it." And actually has a point of view, like why I'm doing this. And it brought me back again. Yes, if I'm doing this, to whom I'm doing? Is it to sell it? Is it for the people? Is it for myself and my ego? And I think being transparent, but also sharing the steps you are doing with the protagonist, it makes the narrative or actually change what you do over time. And yeah, this is how I'm working. And yeah, that's it.
All right. So
Listen to this brilliant young man.
no, sir.
No, really, you embody so many of the beautiful qualities that I'm seeing in the new generations of image makers and storytellers. Bringing so much more like consciousness and care to it. And no, I just did want to recognize that, and I want you all to realize that how special Mahdi is in that way. I mean, if I were to answer that, I'd say that it's to answer your question, it's sort of a lifelong learning process. From but I would say in general, I view the people I photograph now more as collaborators, not subjects. I think that's an important distinction, at least psychologically, to make. Now, I can't always work in that way. I mean, being in the real world, dealing with, um, you know, language, culture, all kinds of different barriers or filters to work through. It's not always easy, but I know that I approach my work with a good heart and a good purpose. And so that sort of idea of being on a mission is, I think, what it guides me. I want to give you one example of a very intense learning moment. I know we're running out of time. I'll try to be quick, but an example of one of those moments where you sort of, it's like a eureka moment or a, like really more of a slap in the face. So I was doing a small story about this kid in my community in New Jersey, so outside of New York City, and he happened to be in the same grade as my son. They were in high school, and so as part of the story about him, I was invited to this Christmas party at a house where the parents weren't there, and I show up not as a parent of this community, but as a photojournalist. And these kids are smoking weed and drinking and smoking cigarettes and like doing, like, as a parent, kind of a nightmare scenario. And like my worst, and my son happened to be there for at one point. Anyway, so I'm realizing like I can't photograph these kids. They're underage. If I ever publish these pictures, I could ruin their lives. And then I thought, excuse my language, but you asshole, if you were the town over and you didn't know any of these kids, I realized I don't know if I would have brought that same caution. And so I had this moment of like slapping myself in the face and realizing that's pretty messed up, right? And it was one of these moments, as I say, this is a lifelong learning process where you inject yourself into situations. Sometimes in this case, it was very familiar. In other cases, it's completely a different world from what I'm used to. And you have to sort of tread your way carefully and hopefully sensitively and intelligently and figure out, you know, what will protect and not hurt the people I'm whose stories I'm telling. You know, like I hope that all made sense. But it was one of these real crystallizing moments of, you know, so if it was kids I didn't know, I might not think about the implications of publishing pictures of them drinking underage or whatever. But because I knew these kids, I'm going, oh my God, that's Noah. That's you know, whoever. So it was a very interesting moment for me. I hope that made sense to you guys. Anyway,
Right. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mahdy, for your valuable knowledge, time, and insight. One thing that we can take away from this last, you know, that Ed said, you know, like I think dignity and the level of empathy that you reflect towards your subject, or you know, the frame that you see through the viewfinder is what matters at the end. You know, like you want to see the world as human as you are yourself. So that being said, I want to thank both of you again. I want to thank Amreen. I can see there's some other special guests here, Shintana, Fahad, and the others, and all the students. You know, I know students who had a long day from 8 in the morning. Thank you for being here. I'm sure you guys benefited a lot from this. And Ed and Mahdy, I want to say, like, you know, we have a huge photography club, and then my course from the NCK department, the NCK 104 Open Elective. With all being there, I want to bring you guys to Bangladesh, maybe along with Amreen's support and so on. We can do an international masterclass and take the works of students, not exhibit just solely in Bangladesh, but take it in London, in New York, in Egypt, and elsewhere. So yes, I'll just give the floor to the MCs to wrap this up. Thank you once again, and goodbye from
Thank
my
you.
end.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mahdy.
Thank you, Ed.
It
You're
has
awesome.
been an honor to host you. For the final time in this session, I, Mali Hamuna,
And I, Salsa bin Haq,
are signing off from Witness to Memory, organized by the Department of MCG. Stay safe, stay happy, and good evening.
Bye.
Bye.